Welcome to this video. In here, I'm going to talk about three branches of government. First, separation of powers. Under Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution, the powers of the federal government are divided between three branches. This idea, also called the separation of powers. This principle keeps each governing body from having too much power. It was one way to prevent establishing a government that could overpower individual and states' rights. So we want no kings and tyranny. Here's a visualization of three branches of government. Pause this video and think for yourself a little bit. Which branch corresponds to which rules? So we have make or pass laws, enforce laws, and interpret laws. Can you think of a name of each? Okay, so they check and balance to each other, and for the first branch is also known as legislative branch. The role for it is to make and pass laws. For the second branch is the executive branch. It enforces laws. Third is judicial branch. It interprets laws. Let's make every effort to juggle I's. LMEEJI. Can you think of a name for it or the purpose of this? Well, legislative branch makes the laws. Executive branch enforces the laws. Judicial branch interprets the laws. If you found this puzzle useful, remember it. The legislative branch, also known as makers of the law. The U.S. legislative branch is known as Congress. It's made up of two separate groups, the House of Representatives and the Senate. It makes laws for the U.S., suggests amendments to the Constitution. So let's fill out this worksheet together. Legislative branch. What's the purpose of it? Makes laws. Who makes up this branch? Congress, also known as House of Representatives and Senate. What is the powers over executive? Override a veto or and impeachment. Power over judicial. Senate confirms judicial appointments. Moving on to executive branch. Executive branch, what's the purpose of it? Enforces laws. Who makes up this branch? President, Vice President, and Cabinet. Power over judicial. Appoints Supreme Court justices. Power over legislative. Veto power. Refuse to sign a bill into law. This is also known as the enforcers of the law. The executive branch is led by the president. It appoints cabinet members, sign bills into law, can veto or also known as refuse to sign bills he does not want to become law, can pardon criminals, and the president's second in command is the vice president, and he is the tie-breaking vote if the Senate is split. Moving on to the judicial branch. It's also known as the interpreters of the law. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. It's made up of 9 judges, also called justices. Justices are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. Justices serve for life. Court cases work their way through the lower courts up to the Supreme Court. They can rule laws and acts unconstitutional. So what's the purpose of judicial branch? Interprets laws. Who makes up this branch? 9 Supreme Court justices. Power over legislative. Can rule laws unconstitutional. Power over executive. Appointed for life. Once a judge is appointed and confirmed, they remain on the Supreme Court until they die or retire. New presidents cannot just replace them. So let's do a little recap of the things that we just learned. Three branches of government: legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial branch. Starting with legislative branch. It also known as the Congress, the rule of Congress, splitting up into House and Senate. What is the number of members for House? 435. Number of members for Senate? 100. Length of term for House? 2 years. Length of term for Senate? 6 years. Elected or appointed for House? Elected. Elected or appointed for Senate? Elected. Age requirement for House? 25. Age requirement for Senate? 30. Citizenship requirement for House, 7 years. Citizenship requirement for Senate, 9 years. What are the list powers? First, makes laws. Second, decides how to spend tax money. Third, raise an army or navy. Fourth, declares war. Executive branch, also known as the office of president. What's the number of members? 1. What's the length of term? 4 years. Elected or appointed? Elected. Age requirement for president? 35. Citizenship requirement for president? Natural-born citizen. List powers. First, Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces. Second, makes treaties. Third, nominates ambassadors and Supreme Court justices. Fourth, grant pardons. Judicial branch. And sorry for just throwing all of the answers, but we will walk through it. Number of members, 9. Length of term for Supreme Court, life. Elected or appointed, appointed. Age requirement for Supreme Court, none. Citizenship requirement for Supreme Court, none. List powers, first, gives final decisions on court cases. Second, decides whether laws and actions of the other two branches abide by the Constitution. Third, protect the supreme law. And here is a optional video resources used along with three branches of government and presidential election process. It is a music video, and it's available through a free trial or paid subscription. So if you would like to view this on your own, you can use this link.